Willow bark. That is where aspirin came from. Not a lab, not a pharmaceutical breakthrough. A tree. Cherokee healers were brewing and chewing willow bark for pain and fever long before Bayer ever existed. The active compound is called salicin. Your body breaks it down into salicylic acid, the same pathway that powers the pill in your medicine cabinet right now. Bayer didn't invent pain relief. They copied it, synthesized it, and sold it back. That is remedy number 1. There are 6 more. And they get stranger from here. There is a database called the Native American Ethnobotany Database, BRT, out of the Botanical Research Institute of Texas. It is not a wellness blog. It is not someone's grandmother's recipe collection. It is a searchable, cataloged archive of documented indigenous plant use across North America, compiled from decades of field research, published botanical studies, and recorded community knowledge. Pull up the Salix entries, that is willow, and what you find is not myth. It is species names, documented uses, preparation methods, and source citations. Practical, recorded, organized. This is what systematic botanical knowledge actually looks like. The Cherokee relationship with salicylate-bearing plants was not accidental. It was a system. Willow, aspen, birch, plants containing natural salicylates were used for fever and pain in ways that have been documented and cross-referenced by ethnobotanists and university researchers. Not invented by wellness influencers. Cataloged by scientists who went into the field, observed the practice, and published what they found. The peer-reviewed literature confirms this. The Q Plants of the World database confirms this. A phytochemistry review archived in the National Center for Biotechnology Information, PMC 6313439, confirms this. This knowledge had a paper trail long before anyone called it alternative medicine. Stay with me, because here is where the number matters. 1897. That is the year Bayer filed its patent on acetylsalicylic acid. Most people hear that date and think that is when aspirin was discovered. But that is not what happened. Salicin had already been extracted from willow bark and studied by European chemists since the 1820s. By 1897, the compound was understood. What Bayer did was synthesize a modified version, stable enough to mass produce, structured to be patentable, positioned to scale. The compound was not invented. It was extracted from a tree that was already being used, repackaged in a laboratory, and sold back to a world that had quietly forgotten where the original came from. Now widen that out, because willow bark was not the only plant in this system. This is where it changes. The second remedy is called prickly ash. Some people called it the toothache tree, and that name is not poetic, it is a warning. Chew the inner bark of Xanthoxylum americanum, and within about 60 seconds, your mouth goes numb. Not tingly, numbu, like a dentist pressed a needle into your gum and then left the room. The compound responsible is called herculin. It is a natural, local anesthetic found in the bark of the prickly ash tree, and it works fast enough to feel impossible the first time you understand what you are actually looking at. Cherokee healers did not use this only for toothaches. Documented records, including work cited by ethnobotanist J.T. Garrett, show the inner bark being used as a poultice for rheumatism and sharp joint pain. Localized, targeted, applied directly to the place where the pain lived. A natural local anesthetic pressed against inflamed tissue. Vital Plan's chemistry breakdown of the plant confirms the herculin content. The herbalist community has a long published record on this one. What it does not have is a press release, because herculin cannot be patented the way a synthetic anesthetic can. Stay with that. Third, black cohosh, Actaia racemosa. Cherokee healers used it specifically for rheumatism and muscular pain. That is not vague. The Q Plants of the World database documents the Cherokee rheumatism use directly. A peer-reviewed phytochemistry study archived in the NCBI traces the documented indigenous applications with full citations. And then here is the detail that should make you stop. Black cohosh is currently one of the best-selling herbal supplements in the United States. It is sitting on a shelf right now at your nearest pharmacy. That label does not mention Cherokee healers. It does not mention ethnobotanical records. It does not mention the decades of documented plant knowledge that built the case for what that capsule claims to do. Something that lived in field notes and community practice for generations got moved to a supplement aisle at a significant markup, and the attribution got quietly left behind. Who decided this knowledge belonged on a shelf with a barcode instead of in a community garden? Here is the part nobody tells you. Remedies 4, 5, 6, and 7 follow a pattern. Each one targets a different type of pain that the modern pharmacy aisle now sells separately. Muscle cramps, spasms, internal aching. And one of the remaining plants, sweet birch, contains something that made early pharmaceutical researchers pay close attention. The inner bark carries a compound so structurally similar to aspirin's active ingredient that the concentration is almost hard to accept. 95% methyl salicylate, the same molecular family as the compound Bayer built an empire on. That number is not a coincidence. And the story of why it stayed in the forest instead of moving into your medicine cabinet is not an accident either. Sweet birch, Betula lenta, a woodland tree common across the eastern United States, growing in forest edges and hillsides from Georgia up through New England. The inner bark and young twigs contain methyl salicylate at concentrations that early pharmacological researchers found remarkable, up to 95% in some analyses. Aspirin's direct chemical cousin, not a trace amount, not a footnote. A dominant compound in a tree that Cherokee communities had been using for aches and fever long before the word pharmaceutical existed in English. Now pay off that number from earlier, 1897. The same decade, Bayer launched mass production of synthetic salicylates, the practice of wildcrafting medicinal birch and willow in Appalachian and Cherokee communities began a slow decline. Not because the plant stopped working, not because the knowledge was disproven, because a cheaper, shelf-stable, mass-producible synthetic version arrived with a marketing apparatus behind it and a patent attached to it. Natural plants cannot be patented. Synthetic modifications can. That distinction did not shape medicine by accident. It shaped medicine by design. This is where it changes from interesting to important. The fourth remedy is one most people have never heard of: rabbit tobacco, Pseudogonophallium obtusifolium, a soft-leafed plant that grows along roadsides and field edges across the eastern half of the country, probably within walking distance of more homes than most people realize. Cherokee healers documented in Paul Hamill's Ethnobotanical Records, pages 51 and 52, cited in published Cherokee ethnobotany research, used rabbit tobacco as a compound for muscle cramps, local pains, and twitching, applied over light scratches on the cramping muscle. Here is the detail that matters. That scratching was not incidental. Superficial abrasions create microchannels in the skin. Plant compounds applied over those channels absorb transdermally, directly through the skin barrier, faster and more efficiently than surface application alone. This is not folk superstition. It is a delivery mechanism, a low-tech, field-craft version of the same basic logic that pharmaceutical patch technology uses today. The Brit species entry number 31,111 documents the use. Hamill is not a blogger. He is a cited, published source in the Ethnobotanical Record. This knowledge was written down. It did not disappear. It was deprioritized. And here is the part that should make you angry. Not conspiratorial angry, pattern angry. When synthetic compounds could be patented, natural plants could not. That single structural difference determined which healing methods got funded, studied, scaled, and distributed, and which ones got quietly reclassified as folk remedies, wellness curiosities, or fringe herbalism. The ethnobotanical records were published. The field research was conducted. The knowledge was not hidden in a vault. It was documented in botanical databases, university-linked studies, and archived field notes that most people will never read because nothing pushed those records toward them. No marketing budget, no distribution channel, no profit motive. What filled that space instead? A supplement aisle. The same compounds, rebranded, repackaged, stripped of their original context, sold back at retail markup to people who have no idea where the knowledge originally came from. Not forgotten by accident, repositioned on purpose. Fifth, Black Haw Viburnum prunifolium, Root bark, used as an antispasmodic, documented in Hamill's Ethnobotany, page 62, and confirmed in the Brit Viburnum prunifolium database entry, specifically for cramping and muscle spasms, the kind of cramping pain that sends people to a drugstore for antispasmodic tablets that cost $12 for a small box. Black haw root bark addressed that same category of pain. It grew in the ground, it cost nothing. It was recorded, cited, and published, and almost nobody outside of dedicated herbalist circles has heard its name. Now here's the proof object that this whole story has been building toward. The Brit Native American Ethnobotany database is not a rumor. It is not a wellness website with vague citations. It is a searchable, publicly accessible, academic-grade archive, the result of decades of field research, direct community documentation, tribal knowledge recording, and published botanical scholarship. It reads like a forgotten pharmacy manual from a world that made different choices. Every plant in this video has an entry in that database. Species name, documented use, source citation, preparation context, it is all there, freely available. It has been there. The knowledge was never truly buried. It was published, archived, and then left in a room that the market had no interest in unlocking. 6th and 7th, wild ginger. Asarum canadense. Root used for cramps, digestive pain, and internal aching. A warming remedy, something that worked from the inside, addressing the kind of diffuse internal discomfort that has no single clean anatomical address. The Brit Asarum entries confirm it. The Cherokee Ethnobotany record with Hamill citations confirms it. And this plant closes something important. Step back and look at what this system covered. External wounds, joint inflammation, nerve-level local pain, muscle cramps, internal spasms, fever, digestive discomfort. 7 plants, 7 distinct pain categories. That is not a collection of lucky guesses. That is a system, a tested, transmitted, accumulated, practical system of botanical pain management developed over generations by people who had no pharmacy 2 miles down the road and needed what actually worked. These plants are not exotic. Willow grows along waterways. Prickly ash grows in thickets and forest edges. Sweet birch stands in the eastern woodlands. Rabbit tobacco colonizes roadsides. Wild ginger spreads across shaded forest floors. They are local. They are in the eastern United States. Some of them are probably within a reasonable distance of where you are sitting right now. Aspirin copied willow bark. Prickly ash numbs like a dentist's needle, and most people have never heard of it. Black cohosh sits in a supplement aisle without a single mention of the communities who developed the knowledge that made it marketable. The Brit database published everything, quietly, completely, with full citations, and the market built a wall of branded products in front of it anyway. You are the type of person who goes back and checks the original source. That is why you are still here. Which of these 7 did you already know, and which one genuinely surprised you? Tell me in the comments, because that answer matters for what comes next. There is one more plant. Cherokee healers used it specifically for respiratory illness. A university research team studied it. The study surfaced briefly in academic databases, and then the public-facing references got quietly pulled. That one is next.